let me be clear. President Trump and his entire administration stand fully behind the heroic men and women of ICE and will always uphold law and order in the United States of America. The deadly incident that took place in Minnesota yesterday occurred as a result of a larger, sinister, left-wing movement that has spread across our country, where our brave men and women of federal law enforcement are under organized attack. Right now, immigration and customs enforcement officers are facing a 1,200% increase in assaults, a 3,200% increase in vehicle rammings, and an 8,000% increase in death threats. ICE agents are faithfully enforcing federal law to protect the safety of the American people by removing criminal illegal aliens from our country, which is exactly what nearly 80 million Americans elected President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance to do. Radicals in the Democrat Party are furious over this. They don't want our border secured or criminal illegal aliens being removed. As a result, Democrats are impeding immigration enforcement operations daily, creating extremely heightened and dangerous circumstances that make it nearly impossible for the men and women of law enforcement to simply do their jobs. Democrats are calling to defund federal law enforcement agencies who are protecting public safety. And Democrats are calling to abolish ICE and defund the police. That will never be allowed to happen under this president and vice president. The Trump administration will redouble our efforts to get the worst of the worst, criminal illegal alien killers, rapists, and pedophiles off of American streets. The Department of Homeland Security will continue to operate on the ground in Minnesota, not only to remove criminal illegal aliens, but also to continue conducting door-to-door investigations of the rampant fraud that has taken place in the state under the failed and corrupt leadership of Democrat Governor Tim Walz. Taxpayers have been ripped off to the tune of billions of dollars in this one state alone, and that is going to end, and people are going to be held accountable. The Trump administration has activated thousands of federal agents, doubled the number of U.S. attorneys in the DOJ office in Minneapolis, and surged resources to hold fraudsters accountable and demand justice for law-abiding American taxpayers and citizens across our country. And that's what brings the vice president out here with me today to discuss all the Trump administration is doing and to make an additional important announcement on this front. So please, Mr. Vice President, will be joining us now.
Guys. Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And I want to echo some of what Carolyn said about what we're doing to combat the rampant fraud that exists in our immigration system, thanks to failed politicians and thanks to people who allowed the American taxpayer to be taken advantage of for far too long. I think it's important to understand why this matters to the American people. I am a father of 3 young kids, a lot of people in my generation. What is that going on there? Is that normal? Okay. CNN installed this broken camera just to throw me off my game, but it's not going to work. So here's the simple fact here. If you're a young parent struggling to afford childcare in the United States of America, there are programs that we have to make it easier for your kids to get in daycare, for your kids to get in preschool. Those programs should go to American citizens, not be defrauded by Somali immigrants and others. Make it hard for you to get the access to the resources you need. But number 2, making it easier for people who shouldn't even be in this country to fleece the United States and our taxpayers to begin with. We have actually activated a major interagency task force to make it possible to get to the heart of this fraud. We have Department of Agriculture resources that are focused on SNAP fraud so that people who need food benefits can get them, but illegal aliens and other fraudsters don't. We have over 1,500 subpoenas that the Department of Justice has issued to get to the heart of the fraud ring. We've done almost 100 indictments, mostly Somali immigrants, but also a few others. And of course, we're looking in with broad investigatory authority to a number of the instances of wrongdoing that we've seen in Minneapolis. But we also want to expand this. We know that the fraud isn't just happening in Minneapolis. It's also happening in states like Ohio. It's happening in states like California. And so what we're doing in order to help coordinate this remarkable interagency effort from the Trump administration, but also to make sure that we prosecute the bad guys and do it as swiftly and efficiently as possible, is we are creating a new Assistant Attorney General position who will have nationwide jurisdiction over the issue of fraud. Now, of course, that person's efforts will start and focus primarily in Minnesota, but it is going to be a nationwide effort because, unfortunately, the American people have been defrauded in a very nationwide way. I want to thank a couple of people for their cooperation, in particular Pam Bondi, our Attorney General. First of all, for getting a lot of resources to Minneapolis to start to investigate and prosecute this fraud really at an industrial scale. We've never seen fraud like this in the history of our country. Pam has been doing a great job to get the resources there to uncover it. But importantly, creating a job like this often takes months, sometimes even longer. When we realized that we needed this Associate Attorney General position, Pam got this person up and running in about a week. We're going to make the nomination hopefully in the next few days. We'll obviously let you guys know who that is when we do it. I've talked to Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who has promised me swift confirmation for this official. But this is the person who is going to make sure that we stop defrauding the American people. Here's one final thing I'll say about this. I've heard a lot of people say that we need a special counsel to investigate fraud in the United States of America. I actually agree, and that's what this position does. It has all the benefits, all the resources, all the authority of a special counsel, but with two crucial differences. Number one, it will be run out of the White House under the supervision of me and the President of the United States. And number two, it's actually constitutionally legitimate. As you guys may know, the special counsel statute has some major constitutional questions. When we get the bad guys, we want to make sure we get them permanently and they don't have some legal technicality they can get out of, which is why we set it up as an Associate Attorney General. I'll take some questions, but I want to make just one final observation here. When I was actually walking out here, somebody sent me a photo of a CNN headline about what happened in Minneapolis. And this is the headline. I'm just going to read it. Outrage after ICE officer kills U.S. citizen in Minneapolis. Well, that's one way to put it, and that is the way that many people in the corporate media have put this attack over the last 24 hours. And I say attack very, very intentionally because this was an attack on federal law enforcement. This was an attack on law and order. This was an attack on the American people. The way that the media, by and large, has reported this story has been an absolute disgrace, and it puts our law enforcement officers at risk every single day. What that headline leaves out is the fact that that very ICE officer nearly had his life ended, dragged by a car 6 months ago, 33 stitches in his leg. So you think maybe he's a little bit sensitive about somebody ramming him with an automobile. What that headline leaves out is that that woman was there to interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation in the United States of America. What that headline leaves out is that that woman is part of a broader left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault, and to make it impossible for our ICE officers to do their job. If the media wants to tell the truth, they ought to tell the truth that a group of left-wing radicals have been working tirelessly, sometimes using domestic terror techniques to try to make it impossible for the President of the United States to do what the American people elected him to do, which is enforce our immigration laws. The President stands with ICE. I stand with ICE. We stand with all of our law enforcement officers. And part of that is recognizing that you people in the media, not everybody in this room, but many people in this room have been lying about this attack. She was trying to ram this guy with her car. He shot back. He defended himself. He's already been seriously wounded in law enforcement operations before. And everybody who's been repeating the lie that this is some innocent woman who was out for a drive in Minneapolis when a law enforcement officer shot at her, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Every single one of you. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I wanted to read a quote from Tim Walz earlier today. He said, when things looked bleak, it was Minnesota's first that held the line for the nation on July 3rd, 1863. And I think we may be in that moment now. Can you comment on his rhetoric and Mayor Jacob Frey and whether they want to see unrest in Minneapolis?
Well, that's very tough rhetoric from a guy who just quit because his fraudulent activities have been uncovered. Look, Tim Walz is a joke. His entire administration has been a joke. The idea that he's some sort of freedom fighter, he's not. He's a guy who has enabled fraud and maybe, in fact, has participated in fraud. That's what this new Assistant Attorney General position is going to find out. I don't care what Tim Walz says. I care about getting to the bottom of this fraud for the American people, and I care about enforcing the nation's immigration laws. That's what we're going to stay focused on.
A related question here. I mean, Democrats have accused ICE of murder. They've said they're targeting Americans. They've told ICE to get the F out of Minnesota. This is going to stoke the fire against ICE agents. And you're talking about ICE agents right now and being concerned about them. What, if anything, is the administration going to do to make sure these folks are protected during this protest? But also, should DHS sort of revisit their procedures here? I mean, nobody wants to see an American killed. Are there changes that need to be made to make sure something like this doesn't happen again?
Look, first of all, of course, nobody wants an American citizen to be killed. This is absolutely a tragedy. But it's a tragedy of the making of the far left. They have radicalized a very small segment of the population, taught them that ICE agents are engaging in wide-scale violation of people's rights. What our ICE officers are doing is deporting the millions of criminal aliens that were let in during the Biden administration. So number one, we have to say, as a matter of leadership, and I would appreciate if the Democrats would join me on this, let's be honest about the fact that we have way too many illegal aliens in this country. Our ICE officers should be supported in doing their job. You're trying to actually marshal the far left lunatic fringe to engage in doxing, to try to make it impossible for them to enforce the law, and in some cases, actually to engage in acts of domestic terrorism against our law enforcement officers. When you talk about different plans, different protocols, different policies, I forget exactly how you asked the question. Here's the simple fact. What we're going to do is make it easier for the American People's Administration to enforce the American people's law. And that means that Democrats have to stop rallying the mob against legitimate law enforcement operations. And that means that we are going to get tougher. And that's what this AAG position is about. We're going to get tougher at the people who are defrauding the United States by inciting violence against our law enforcement officers. That's one of the things that we're going to do. We've already started that work at the Department of Justice. We're going to keep on doing it, and this new AAG position is going to kick that into high gear.
Vice President Vance, you just suggested that this woman who was killed, Renee Good, is part of a broader left-wing network. Who do you think is behind this broader left-wing network?
Well, it's one of the things we're going to have to figure out. But here's the way that I put it. When somebody throws a brick at an ICE agent or somebody tries to run over an ICE agent, who paid for the brick? And who told protesters to show up and engage in violent activity against our law enforcement officers? You see, just with this most recent terrible incident in Minneapolis, you see friends of this woman's or other people who are eyewitnesses saying basically that she was there to engage in obstruction of a legitimate law enforcement operation. How did she get there? How did she learn about this? There's an entire network, and frankly, some of the media are participating in it, that is trying to incite violence against our law enforcement officers. It's ridiculous, it's preposterous, and part of our investigatory work is getting to the bottom of it. Who's funding it? Who's supporting it? Who's cheerleading it? And of course, if there's illegal activity related to that, we're going to get to the bottom of that and prosecute it where we can.
Vice President, thank you for taking questions today. Is there a risk with you describing her as a deranged leftist, talking about very specific facts of these events, when an investigation is just beginning? Are you preempting a thorough investigation by drawing such conclusions? And have you received any information beyond the videos we've seen publicly about this individual, her specific acts, that has informed your point of view?
Well, first of all, the Department of Justice is going to investigate this. The Department of Homeland Security is already investigating this. But the simple fact is, what you see is what you get in this case. You have a woman who is trying to obstruct a legitimate law enforcement operation. Nobody debates that. You have a woman who aimed her car at a law enforcement officer and pressed on the accelerator. Nobody debates that. I can believe that her death is a tragedy, while also recognizing that it's a tragedy of her own making and a tragedy of the far left who has marshaled an entire movement, a lunatic fringe against our law enforcement officers. I think what is clearly happening here, and it's going to keep on happening unless the Democrats wake up and say, you know what? You don't have to agree with our immigration policies. You don't have to agree with what the president or the vice president believe about immigration enforcement. But why don't you take this to the ballot box? Why don't you vote? Why don't you organize? Instead, what some of them are doing What some of them are doing is encouraging people to get violent with our law enforcement officials. It's disgraceful and it's got to stop.
Mr. President,
Yeah.
just to follow up on that question, and again, thank you for taking questions, Mr. Vice President. There's clearly a lot of emotion in Minnesota, across the country over this incident. You're calling Renee Good a deranged leftist. There's been heated rhetoric that we've also heard from officials. What responsibility do you and the president have to diffuse some of the tension that we are seeing play out in Minnesota, bring down the temperature as this investigation is unfolding?
What we have a responsibility to do is to protect the people who are enforcing the law and protect the country writ large. Whether you're Democrat or Republican, you deserve to have the people's laws enforced in the United States of America. Now, again, I'm not happy that this woman lost her life. I'm not happy that this woman was there at a protest violating the law by interfering with a law enforcement action. I think that we can all recognize that the best way to turn down the temperature is to tell people to take their concerns about immigration policy to the ballot box. Stop assaulting and stop inciting violence against our law enforcement officers. That's the best way to take down the temperature. And we're not going to give in to terrorism on this. And that's exactly what's happening. People trying to antagonize, to commit acts of violence. They throw bricks at them. Sometimes they shoot at them. Sometimes they dox them. Sometimes they go to their place of residence and harass their families. This is classic terrorism. And we cannot say that when a far left fringe is inciting violence against our brave law enforcement officials, that we're no longer going to enforce the law. That's rewarding the very people who are engaged in this garbage. The actual reward that they just got is a new assistant attorney general who is going to prosecute and investigate this stuff even more aggressively than before. Yeah.
Thanks for taking my question. So the head of Minnesota's investigations agency says that the U.S. Attorney's Office has essentially cut off the state investigations agency's access to the investigation. What is the precedent for that, and why shouldn't the Minnesota officials on the ground have access and evidence to work on this investigation?
First of all, I wish the state officials in Minnesota would investigate why you have so many people who are using their vehicles and other means to actually interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation. The precedent here is very simple. You have a federal law enforcement official engaging in federal law enforcement action. That's a federal issue. That guy is protected by absolute immunity. He was doing his job. The idea that Tim Walz and a bunch of radicals in Minneapolis are going to go after and make this guy's life miserable because he was doing the job that he was asked to do is preposterous. The unprecedented thing is the idea that a local
in many ways put out of business, that weren't able to do business, that, tremendous wealth for the world. The oil supply was hurt. Everything was hurt. I mean, you had things happening in the Middle East that were bad, not only in Gaza with the death and the destruction going on for years. And it's been cleaned up. It's amazing. It's been cleaned up. Now, there'll be some remnants right now. We're going to have to see what happens with Hamas. We're going to have to see what happens with Hezbollah and Lebanon. But we have 59 countries that signed on, and they want to go in and help if we should have to do something with Hamas, which is a possibility. I think they're going to do what they said they were going to do. They were going to disarm, but they've been armed for a long time.
They've been a little slow to disarm.
Yeah, they've been a little bit slow.
Will you support Israel? Will you put them on a timetable?
Well, I would, but first we'll see whether or not they're going to be disarming. Look, I'm all for it if they don't. They made the promise that they would.
If they don't.
They've made an agreement that they're going to disarm. So we're going to have to assume that they're going to, but it's not their nature to disarm. It's not exactly their nature. Hezbollah has been very bad in Lebanon. But overall, I mean, we have an amazing situation compared to what it was. And we really do have peace in the Middle East. And I will say Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and other countries have been amazing. They've been, so helpful in getting it done. But the biggest thing was the attack on Iran. If you had a strong Iran, a respected Iran, a powerful Iran, like I guess it was at one point, a year and a half ago, you wouldn't have been able to make peace because the other countries wouldn't have been able to have that dark cloud hanging over them. And they, by knocking out their nuclear potential, they would have had a nuclear weapon within 2 months. By knocking that's why I had to go in.
Oh.
Every president wanted to go in and none of them did.
You mean you didn't want to send cargo planes of cash and other currency?
That was terrible. I mean, I've never seen hundreds of millions of dollars were sent in cash on Boeing 757s, beautiful Boeing 7. They opened cash was piled up to the ceiling. I never even knew a president could do that. How do you do that? What do you do? Call the banks? You know, they emptied out every bank in Virginia and Maryland to get that cash, and they sent it over there and gave it to them. No, we took the opposite approach, exactly the opposite approach.
Are you following the protesting that is taking place all over the country of Iran
Yeah,
now?
I'm following it very
And
closely.
have you read that the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has a plan B to go to Russia?
Or someplace, yeah. He's looking to go someplace.
Do you believe that
It's getting very
Iran,
bad.
you think the country is on the verge of collapsing?
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Truthcast. I was getting a little bit of the Fox News there and trying to get a live feed from Sean Hannity live and with President Trump. We'll go back to JD too, but I want to try to catch more of Hannity, and I want to see if we can do that. Give me a minute. 1 second. And just let me know. Okay. Hold on 1 sec.
So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. They know, though, that it's a stampede. Is, I guess, the best word. They have like a stampede. You talk about stampede for cattle. But the people are stampeding, and you're losing a lot of people with the stampedes. There's so many people protesting. Nobody's ever seen anything like what's happening.
How's the audio?
Iran on notice that if they start shooting at them, these people are totally unarmed people, and they love their country. They want something to happen. Look at their country.
Can you hear?
They've gone back 150 years. But I told them that if they do anything bad to these people, we're going to hit them very hard.
So if there is mass murder by the Iranian Ayatollahs and those leadership, you're pledging to the people of Iran that you will come to their aid.
I've said it very loud and very clear. You know, that's what we're going to do.
I have this hat. I guess you were playing golf with Lindsey
I
Graham.
did that for Lindsey Graham.
Yeah. It says make Iran great again.
And what he means by that, because I said, here's a little tricky hat. Yeah, he want me to sign this hat.
No, can I sell this?
No,
It's probably worth a lot of money.
Kept my signature. But he asked me to sign that. I said, you know, there's a lot of definitions for that. And what he's talking about is the people that are, you know, protesting, I guess is the only word you can use. It's really the biggest protest I've ever seen. The people that are protesting and they take over the country, he wants to see if Iran can be better. You know, years ago, a friend of mine was a developer from New York, and I was a young developer, and he went to Iran and he built buildings in Iran, and he made a lot of money, and he did very well. And it was like condos and rentals, and he loved it. And he thought it was
Iranian hegemony
Sorry about that, folks.
and nuclear arms.
Are you hearing it now?
Well, you had to stop that. You had no choice. It should have been done long before I got there. It should have been done earlier. They just, you look back and Obama should have done it. They all should have done it. Clinton should have done it. Obama went the other way. I mean, Obama decided to go with Iran. I mean, he was, I don't know how Jewish people can vote for Biden and Obama. They were absolutely on South Korea. They were against Jews. Yeah, we're going to find out.
Favorite mayor.
Well, I have a very nice relationship, but I thought it would take at least maybe a month or 2 months before he went after me. He hit me on the attack on Venezuela, which is pretty unusual because not too many people have hit us. That was a perfect attack. Think of what we've done. I mean, we've taken over a whole country. We're going to make the country strong and good. We're going to ultimately be able to vote and put somebody in that they like. The oil that we've taken $4 billion worth of oil in one day, and that'll increase. We're going to have it rebuilt. All the big oil companies are coming in. They're going to make a lot of money, and Venezuela's going to get some of that money, and we're going to get some of that money. And we brought stability to the region. We brought stability and much lower oil prices. You know, we have gasoline now down to, in many cases, $1.99 a gallon. And with
6 or 7
Biden,
states.
it was $4.50, $5. We have it we brought it way down. We've done a great job. On the word affordability, prices are way down. They're going to go lower. Prices, you know, everything follows oil. Oil is so big, everything follows oil. If oil prices are down, everything's down. I mean, you could look at
everything goes lower.
It affects everything. It affects a truck that delivers donuts. It affects the stove that makes the donut. It affects everything.
2 more issues on foreign policy and national security. Then I do want to do a deep dive into the economy. I want to ask you,
The economy is unbelievable.
We're going to get to that.
I know, but it's unbelievable.
Can Cuba survive without Venezuelan oil? I don't see how it can.
Can who survive?
Cuba.
No, Cuba totally relies on Venezuela for money and for oil, and they give Venezuela protection. That was always the deal. They're very tough. They're good soldiers. They got wiped out, as you know.
Yeah.
3 days ago, wiped out. I don't want to even say how many, but they got wiped out. But Cuba gives protection to Venezuela, and Venezuela gives Cuba money through oil.
Yeah.
And it's worked that way for a long time.
You talked
But it
about
doesn't work that way anymore. So I don't know what Cuba's going to do. I think Cuba's going to fail. I don't think there are any alternatives for Cuba.
I don't know how they survive without
We
Venezuelan
have great
energy.
people from Cuba. Marco Rubio is great. He knows Cuba very
Some
well.
people said, somebody told me today it was Marco's revenge.
Well, maybe it was, but they a lot of great people.
Yeah.
A lot of great people. We'll see what happens.
You live in
We
South Florida.
want to do something to help Cuba.
But we mentioned Vladimir
You know
Putin.
the Cubans I want to help? I want to help the Cubans in the United States that got treated so badly by Castro. Because we have a lot of Cuban population here. We have some of the best people in the country, Cuban. And I want to help those people. They got treated so badly. They left on rafts and they left on other, and they got just thrown out.
Broken down.
Those people are going to be taken care of.
Broken down, dilapidated, rickety boats, shark-infested waters, inner tubes, because things were so bad there.
They came in and the worst floating vessels that there have ever been, and circled by sharks and everything else. And many of them, as you know, many of them didn't make it.
You talked about peace and your involvement around the globe and the success that you've had. You said many times that you thought the easiest conflict to resolve would be the European conflict, Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah.
And now you pointed out many times that it became the most difficult. A couple of things on that issue. Vladimir Putin, we did take out this Russian flag tanker along with Great Britain.
Right.
Tough decision, number one. Number two,
I didn't think it was a tough decision.
will you support the sanctions bill? I think there are 84 or 5 senators that want.
Yeah, they only do it if it's subject to me, and I support it.
You support it.
I hope we don't have to use it. And we have big sanctions on Russia right now.
No.
Russia's economy is very bad. but they are much bigger than Ukraine. Yeah, they're a much bigger, more powerful country from that
Did
standpoint.
Vladimir call you after this tanker was seized?
I don't want to say that, but the fact is that the Russian ships, it was a submarine and a destroyer. They both left very quickly when we arrived. And we took over the ship, and the oil is being unloaded right now.
All right, we'll take a break. We are in the Roosevelt Room. We're in the White House. More with President Trump on the other side as we continue from Washington, D.C.
Well, my friends, sorry for some of the audio issues that we were having earlier. My apologies. I was trying to get us to the Hannity situation because I knew President Trump was going on live. I'm going to take us back to J.D. Vance, and then we'll go back to President Trump when they return. All right, let me get right back to that. And here we go.
So what I'd like Minnesota to focus on is the real issue that they're encouraging people. Minneapolis officials are encouraging people to commit violence against ICE officials. It's ridiculous. It's got to stop. Go ahead.
Mr. President, thank you. You said earlier that there's a left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault, and make it impossible for ICE officers to do their job. You told my colleague just now that there's an investigation going on into that network.
Yep.
So if everything that you say is true, how does being part of that network justify being shot?
Well, being part of the network doesn't justify being shot, but ramming an ICE officer with your car, that's what justifies being shot. It's not a good thing, by the way, but when you force somebody to engage in self-defense, it's almost a preposterous question. I'm not saying that funding some of this stuff justifies capital punishment. Nobody would suggest that. The reason this woman is dead is because she tried to ram somebody with her car and that guy acted in self-defense. That is why she lost her life. And that is the tragedy. Now, there may be other violations of the law and other penalties that are associated with those violations of the law. For example, if you are funding violence against our law enforcement officers, I'm not a prosecutor. My guess is that's not the sort of thing that earns capital punishment, but it should sure as hell earn you a few years in prison if you're funding the effort to try to assault our law enforcement officers. What is, I'm sorry, guys, what's going on here? You guys are meant to report the truth. How have you let yourself become agents of propaganda of a radical fringe that's making it harder for us to enforce our laws? You just asked me a question that presumed that the reason why this woman died is because she was engaged in legitimate protest. She tried to run somebody over with her car, and the guy defended himself when that happened. Next question.
The investigation is still ongoing.
I said next question.
Mr. Vice President, I mean, you presumably watched the video yourself. There's not the slightest doubt in your mind, having viewed it, that the victim, you.
This is unbelievable.
She deliberately
CIA operatives right here.
Despite seeing this video.
Look, I don't know what is in a person's heart or in a person's head. And obviously, we're not going to get the chance to ask this woman what was going on. What I am certain of is that she violated the law. What I'm certain of is that that officer had every reason to think that he was under very serious threat for injury or in fact, his life. What I'm certain of is that she accelerated in a way where she ran into the guy. I don't know what was in her heart and what was in her head, but I know that she violated the law, and I know that officer was acting in self-defense. It raises an interesting point, though. Look, if people want to say that we should have a legitimate debate about, what was she really doing, right? Was she panicking when she drove into this officer, or was she actually trying to ram him? That's a reasonable conversation. What's not reasonable is for so many of you to plaster all over the media that this was an innocent woman and that the ICE agent committed murder, which is what many of you have said explicitly and some of you have said implicitly. That's what I have an objection to. The idea that this was not justified is absurd, and I think everybody knows it in their heart. Yeah.
Mr. Vice President,
in the green jacket.
Taking down the temperature, it seems like political violence is ratcheting up and riots could be around the corner. What steps does the administration have planned to try to unite America? Average people on both political sides are so tired of fighting with each other, and I think all the journalists in this room could agree with
Vance is crushing it, but we're going to go back to President Trump and Hannity here. Here we go.
No, Cuba totally relies on Venezuela for money and for oil, and they give Venezuela protection. That was always the deal. They're very tough. They're good soldiers. They got wiped out, as you know.
Yeah.
3 days ago, wiped out. I don't want to even say how many, but they got wiped out. But Cuba gives protection to Venezuela, and Venezuela gives Cuba money through oil.
Yeah.
And it's worked that way for a long time.
You talked
But it
about
doesn't work that way anymore. So I don't know what Cuba's going to do. I think Cuba's going to fail. I don't think there are any alternatives for Cuba.
I don't know how they survive without Venezuela.
We have great people from Cuba. Marco Rubio is great. He knows Cuba very well.
Some people said somebody told me today it was Marco's revenge.
Well, maybe it was, but they a lot of great people.
Yeah,
a lot of great people. We'll see what happens.
You live in
we
South
want
Florida.
to do something to help Cuba.
Yeah. But you mentioned Vladimir Putin.
You know the Cubans. I want to help them. I want to help the Cubans in the United States that got treated so badly by Castro. Because we have a lot of Cuban population here. We have some of the best people in the country, Cuban. And I want to help those people. They got treated so badly. They left on rafts and they left on, and they got just thrown out.
Broken down.
Those people are going to be taken care of.
Broken down, dilapidated, rickety boats, shark-infested waters, inner tubes, because things were so bad there.
They came in in the worst floating vessels that there have ever been, and circled by sharks and everything else. And many of them, as you know, many of them didn't make it.
Trying to get us back on track with the live.
Always loses the midterm, even if they've done well, almost always. And you'd think it would be like a 50-50 deal. Even if the president's done a great job, I think we've done a great job. We've done maybe the best job ever in the first year. But they always seem to lose the midterm. There's something down deep psychologically with the voters that they want maybe a check or something. I don't know what it is exactly, but you would think when you have a victory and then on top of the victory, you have a great successful presidency, it would be an automatic win. But it's never been a win. I mean, almost never been. You said 2 times or 3 times in 100 years. It's right around that number. Yeah. Think of it. Out of, the elections take place every 2 years in this case. And to only win a couple of times in many, many years is hard to believe. And it doesn't make sense. And nobody's been able to define why. So I think hopefully we're going to, because we've had incredible, we passed a great, big, beautiful bill, tax cuts for everybody. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. Deductions if you buy a car, you take a loan from a bank, you can deduct the interest on the loan. Nobody ever thought that was going to happen. And we have so many things, and we're respected all over the world again, like we've never been respected before. I mean, we're respected. Look at NATO. NATO agreed to go from 2% to 5%, and they pay us the money. We don't lose anything in terms of money. What I do want to stop in the war with Ukraine and Russia is, last week, it was just reported they lost 32,000 soldiers. The week before, for the month. The month before, they lost 27,000. And the month before that, they lost 26,000 soldiers between the two of them. And I'd like to be able to save those souls. It doesn't affect the United States very much. It really doesn't. We sell, Biden gave them $350 billion. Can you imagine? We didn't get any of it back, but I did. Actually, I made a deal for rare earth. I said, listen, if we go any further, we want rare earth. We want to get our money back. And I made a deal with Ukraine. It was a very fair deal where we get our money back. I had to work to get the money back. This is Biden's war. This isn't my war. I would like to stop it because there's so many people being killed.
Let me go to the
mostly soldiers, but so many people.
So I've always been a movement conservative. I've always believed in supply side economics, starting with Reagan. At the time, 70 to 28%, he dropped the tax rates, longest period of peacetime economic growth. 21 million new jobs were created. Now, this one big, beautiful bill, largest tax cuts in history.
Yeah.
Unlike any president before you, you have secured trillions in monies dedicated to new manufacturing,
Right.
including automobiles, semiconductor chips, rare earth would be
More
part
than
of it.
anybody has ever gotten.
Okay, so all of this is now in the it's going to be
in the
infused into
hopper.
the econ. It's in the hopper. It's going to be infused into the economy. But we just ended the third quarter with 4.3% GDP. We just have the lowest gas prices in 5 years, as you pointed out. That impacts everything everybody buys at every store that they go to. No tax, tips, overtime.
Right.
I worked in the service industry. I worked in the construction industry. That helps workers. That helps families.
Sure.
Scott Besson said that people are going to feel it in their paycheck. They're feeling it at the pump. You look at all of this. You've created a little shy of 1 million new jobs already. And
Manufacturing.
that's after inheriting the economy. It's really not your economy for the first 6-8
And
months.
they're private sector jobs. They're not government jobs. Don't forget, I could have the greatest numbers in history. All I have to do is hire a couple of million people, put them in government. That's what Biden did. He just put people in government. You had 10 people for one job. I did the opposite. I've trimmed down government. Any numbers that we have are with a very trimmed down government. I could come up with unemployment or employment numbers that are so good that like nobody's ever seen. Just say, fellas, hire 2 million people right now. But you can't make our country great that way. That's how you go into trouble. That's how you become Venezuela.
A lot of people don't understand in the big, beautiful bill is something known as 100% depreciation.
Yeah.
That is putting an accelerant
1 year
on manufacturing.
Right.
You can depreciate your entire investment if you're building, for example, a manufacturing
In
facility.
1 year.
In 1 year.
As opposed to 40 years.
And it may not seem like a big deal, but for people that are struggling financially, to be able to deduct the interest on your call loan, that's
So I had the most successful economy in the world in my first term. We did great. I think that was the single biggest. I had that, but that was for a much shorter period of time. It's not as good as this one. But that was the reason I believe that we were so successful.
Mhm.
We had great jobs. We had great everything. We had the greatest economy. This economy will blow it away. I believe.
All right, another one expired, and so let me go to one more here and see if we can pick it up live. Let me see if I can. Okay. Gotta do another here. Here we go.
Was able to maintain control.
Here we go. Got it.
Times in the last 150 years, you discussed this when you met with Republicans this past week. So historical trends are not with you. However, historically, peace and prosperity do drive elections. We just took a trip around the entire globe, and you have your fingerprints pretty much everywhere, all over the map. And
We've done great everywhere. It's amazing. It's an amazing phenomenon that on 2 or 3 occasions, I don't know, it depends on how far you want to go back, but if you go back a long way, the sitting president, whether it's Democrat or Republican, always loses the midterm, even if they've done well, almost always. And, you know, you'd think it would.
was able to maintain control. Was able to maintain.
Sounds like we got the preview back, and so we're kind of repeating. Let me take us to Vance, back to Vance. President Trump, great stuff, obviously, but what really happened today with this this whole press conference with Vance is just fire. So I want to bring you back to that, yeah, they're you know, what's happening here is that the White House is going on the offensive and bringing out JD Vance, Trump on Hannity, flat out calling the CIA Mockingbird media out for their absolutely absurd questions and absurd assumptions, right? So let's go back to JD.
Me, that we don't want to be part of the problem. Do you have any words to unite America?
You know, I know you don't want to be a part of the problem, and I think that's true of a lot of you. I'm not sure it's true for everybody, because the reporting over this has been one of the biggest scandals I've ever seen in media. I've never seen a case so misrepresented and misreported when you have a guy who was defending himself and is now being treated as some sort of federal assassin by so many of the people in this room. First of all, let me say about crime. You mentioned violence. One of the things we're proudest about is that you saw violent crime over the last year drop by 20%. Why is that drop by 20%? Is it because we're attacking our law enforcement officers, or is it because we in the administration are empowering our law enforcement officers to enforce the law? I think that's one of the ways you take down the temperature, is you make people feel more secure and safe in their person and property. That's why we care so much about protecting our law enforcement, because it accrues to the benefit of the entire national community. I think that we can absolutely talk about the ways in which, you know, we can lower the temperature by discussing differences in a reasonable and rational way. Again, I'm happy to talk with any congressional Democrat or any of you about our immigration policy, about why I think it's necessary, about why I think it's in the best interest of the country, about why the President of the United States was elected to actually enforce the border for the first time in at least 4 years. So here's the problem. That's not the debate so many people are having. They are actively covering for people who are committing acts of violence against federal law enforcement. It is preposterous. The way to take down the temperature is to stop it. Have your debates about policy. Attack me. Attack the President of the United States. Don't attack our law enforcement officers. They are trying to do the job the American people demanded that they do. They are not policy actors. They are enforcing the law. They should be treated with a modicum of dignity and respect. And the fact that they're not is why incidents like yesterday happened. The one final point I'll make about this is, look, there's a part of me that feels very, very sad for this woman, not just because she lost her life, but because I think she is a victim of left-wing ideology. What young mother shows up and decides they're going to throw their car in front of ICE officers who are enforcing legitimate law? You've got to be a little brainwashed to get to that point to where you're willing not just to protest, that's fine, not peacefully protest, but throw your vehicle in front of legitimate law enforcement officers and drive your car into them. To get to that point, you have to be, I think, radicalized in a very, very sad way. I certainly wish that she hadn't got there. I know there's an ICE officer right now who very much wishes he was not put in the position where he had to fire a gun to defend his own life. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. What's your message, following up on that, what's your message to the leaders in Minnesota, the governor of Minnesota, the mayor of Minneapolis, to calm down the situation on the ground, on the streets? What's your message also to those protesters who saw that video in a completely different way than you saw that video?
Well, first of all, I think if you watch every angle of that video, there is one angle where if you squint, you can maybe tell yourself that it's not clear what happened. But when you look at all angles of that video, it is very clear that her vehicle went right for the guy. She actually collided with him. And then that's, of course, when he fired his shots. That's obvious, okay? So what I'd say to the protesters is, by all means, protest peacefully, but make this about ideas. Make this about disagreement with our policy. Don't use your protest as a justification or an encouragement for people to go and incite violence and participate in violence against our law enforcement officials. To the people on the ground in Minneapolis, meaning the local officials in Minneapolis from Tim Walz on down, I'd say, look, why can't you just disagree with a given piece of immigration policy without turning law enforcement into the enemy? And think about, for example, a criminal law where a police officer goes and arrests somebody because they violated a criminal law. If you're mad about that, go and protest the politician who passed that law. Don't attack the police officer who's just doing their job. We had a wide open border under Joe Biden. I happen to think it's a good thing the President of the United States has closed it down. If you think that's a bad idea, criticize this administration for a policy decision. Don't attack our people for enforcing the law, because I guarantee you go to ICE, there are black people and white people. There are Democrats and Republicans. They are patriotic Americans who are trying to enforce the law. Attack me, layoff of our ICE agents. Yeah, in the blue, all the way. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice President. You've called on Tim Walz to resign. Can you lay out the case as to why he should step down?
Well, look, I think Tim Walz should resign because it's very clear either that he knew about the fraud in Minneapolis, he knew about the welfare fraud, or at the very least, he looked the other way. I mean, this is not like Lex Luthor, right? This is not movie villain fraud. This is the lowest IQ possible fraud. This is, we're going to take the absence of kids and set up a daycare center where there are no children, and we're going to call our early childhood education center the Quality Learning Center. By the way, if you can't spell learning, maybe you shouldn't be in early childhood education. But people got rich off of this. We know that there were schools who either had no enrollment or at least they overstated their enrollment. Tim Walz, either it was unbelievable incompetence or he was in on the fraud. That's one of the things we're going to get to the bottom of. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Can you explain the difference between this Associate Attorney General and a special counsel? And do you envision this being a permanent position or having more of a limited scope?
Well, it's going to be permanent until we get to the bottom of what's going on. So I think it's going to last for at least the remainder of the administration. What's different about it from a special counsel is, if you remember, the Jack Smith case where the special counsel was found unconstitutional, one of the big issues there is that that person was not an appointed person, completely aside from all the other issues that the person was a lunatic and that the case had no merit. There was a fundamental constitutional issue, which is that he had not been appointed by the president and he had not been confirmed by the United States Senate. An assistant attorney general, what that's going to allow us to do is appoint this person, have them confirmed by the Senate. That's one difference. The more substantive difference is that this person is going to be part of a very broad interagency White House that's being led from the President of the United States on down. And that's going to give them the resources, the access to material and information to make this person more effective. I think a lot of people have asked, how are you really going to get to the heart of the fraud? We've been asking ourselves that question for the past couple of months, and we think this is the critical piece at the Department of Justice to really ramp this fraud investigation into high gear. In the red tie, yeah.
Vice President Vance, I wanted to ask, what's your message to far leftist agitators who feel emboldened to obstruct ICE activity in Minnesota and around the country?
Well, I think they shouldn't feel emboldened because now they have an assistant attorney general who is going to prosecute and investigate their fraud and their violence more aggressively than it has ever been investigated in the United States of America. We are doing so much to try to find the financing networks and the domestic terrorism networks that legitimate this violence, that fund this violence, and that, of course, engage in the violence. These people should not feel emboldened because they have, for the first time, maybe in American history, an administration that is not going to tolerate political violence of any kind from anywhere. Yeah.
We are clear today that the entire weight of the federal government is behind these ICE agents and this ICE agent in particular. There is still a federal investigation happening on the ground. Does that mean that they are not looking into this ICE agent at all? They are just focused on the woman who was in the car? What is the investigation if the federal government has already determined that its weight is behind this ICE investigation?
So what do you mean? When you say investigation, do you mean investigation of the shooting yesterday or of the fraud that's happening in Minneapolis?
Yesterday.
Okay, look, DHS, as I understand it, has an investigation already ongoing. I know that other organs of our government are looking at this. So yes, there's certainly an investigation that's happening right now. But as part of the broader fraud investigation, a lot of what we're doing with the Department of Justice has already started. We've got over 1,500 subpoenas. We've got people this morning, actually, we're going door to door to actually knock on some of these fraudulent care centers, these fraudulent social services organizations to get to the bottom of what's going on there. So the investigation in some ways has already been ramping up into the anti-fraud element for at least a few weeks. What we're trying to do is supercharge it and make sure there's a designated person within the Department of Justice who completely controls that particular focus.
Yeah. Just to follow up on that, Mr. Vice President, on the agent, is he still on duty or has he been placed on leave, on administrative leave? And what really was the target of the operation on Wednesday? Of the ICE operation on Wednesday?
Well, first of all, it was a legitimate law enforcement operation. We were going door to door to try to find criminal illegal aliens and deport them from the United States of America, because if you come to our country illegally in violation of our immigration laws, then we have the mandate, and in fact, we have the legal duty to enforce those immigration laws. Whether he's been placed on administrative leave, I don't know the answer to that question. I'd refer it to the Department of Homeland Security, and they can follow up. I will say, look, I would appreciate everybody saying a prayer for that agent. Look, in the past 6 months, he has been hit twice by a motor vehicle. One time, the first time, it led to over 30 stitches and very serious injuries to his legs. This is a guy who's actually done a very, very important job for the United States of America. He's been assaulted, he's been attacked, he's been injured because of it. He deserves a debt of gratitude. And I think the media prejudging and talking about this guy as if he's a murderer is one of the most disgraceful things I've ever seen from the American media. Yeah.
Vice President, what is your specific role in the future of Venezuela? And I'm wondering, could you confirm reports that the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, was kept out of the planning for the operations because of her past concerns about military involvement in Venezuela?
So I've heard a couple of things. One, that I was kept out of the planning for the Venezuela operation. That's false. And another, that Tulsi was kept out of the planning for Venezuela operations. That's completely false. Look, we're all part of the same team. And one of the things that is really amazing about that operation is that we kept it very tight to the senior cabinet level officials and related officials in our government. And we kept this operation secret for a very long time. I'm very proud of that. I think it suggests that the team works very well together. Well, looking ahead, what is my role? Look, my role is going to be whatever the president asks me to do. Well, every other day, I'm chairing the meeting that we do on this among White House principals to talk about next steps to try to ensure that Venezuela is stable. And as the president has directed us to do, to ensure that the new Venezuelan government actually listens to the United States and does what the United States needs it to do under our country's best interest. So I'm going to be as involved as the president wants me to be. So far, that's been very involved, and I'll keep on doing that so long as the president asks me to do it. In the purple.
Yes.
Even beyond the war powers
Sorry,
resolution.
we'll go purple, and then we'll go pink or whatever that is in front.
Royal purple. And then beige. All right.
Okay.
Are there any indications, you talked about the network, are there any indications that the lady who was shot, I know there are different reports from there, her wife said they were new to the area. Are there any indications she may have been a paid agitator, and maybe that there are others that were brought to the area, considering everything that's going on in Minneapolis?
I wouldn't say that she was paid. I don't have the evidence to say that one way or the other. What I do know is that she was violating the law. And if you just look at the eyewitness accounts, they were saying she was there to prevent the enforcement of the law. She was trying to obstruct a legitimate law enforcement operation. That much is obviously clear. The rest of it, of course, is part of the reason why we investigate this stuff. Yeah.
Mr. Vice President, even beyond the war powers resolution today, Congress has bucked President Trump on issues like tariffs. Are you concerned that President Trump is losing his grip on Republicans in the Congress, and what are you going to do about it?
No, I'm not concerned at all. First of all, we talked to some of the senators who were going to vote the wrong way, in my view, on this resolution today. Much of their argument was based more on a legal technicality than any disagreement in policy. If you look at the people who actually voted, every single one of them have supported the administration's plan. Second of all, as the president, I believe himself, has already said, every president, Democrat or Republican, believes the War Powers Act is fundamentally a fake and unconstitutional law. It's not going to change anything about how we conduct foreign policy over the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months, and that'll continue to be how we approach things. Go ahead.
President. So we are seeing, regarding Iran, we are seeing the protests in Iran these days. The cities are begging for help from the U.S. and Israel, naming streets in the city after President Trump. It seems there is an opportunity here that may not come again. Will the United States stand by the citizens of Iran? And if Israel decides to strike again the nuclear sites in Iran, is the U.S. expected to take part?
Well, look, we certainly stand by anybody who's engaged in peaceful protests, anybody who's trying to exert their rights for free association and to have their voices heard. Obviously, the Iranian regime has a lot of problems. And as the President of the United States has said, the smartest thing for them to have done, it was true 2 months ago, it's true today, is for them to actually have a real negotiation with the United States about what we need to see when it comes to their nuclear program. I'll let the president speak to what we're going to do in the future, but we certainly stand with anybody across the world, including the Iranian people who are advocating for their rights. I'll take just a couple more questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. Concerning Venezuela, how would you assure the Caribbean region that they will remain a zone of peace? Because some member states in the region are concerned.
Well, look, the president had a very productive phone call with the president of Colombia yesterday, and we continue to talk at all levels of government with a number of our friends in the Caribbean region. I actually think this is really good for peace in the Caribbean, because when you take away a major source of illegal cartel revenue, which is the cocaine trade, the fentanyl trade, other sources of illicit revenue, you actually remove the power of one of the main destabilizing forces in Latin America and in the Caribbean. I really do think, look, we say it all the time, this is the president of peace. One of the ways that you establish peace in your own hemisphere is to make it clear that the United States is going to be respected, that the United States is willing to take power away from criminal cartel organizations and give it to legitimate governments. That's how we see the future of the Western Hemisphere, and we think it's going to be much more peaceful than it was certainly under Joe Biden. I'll take one more question. Go ahead.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. On Greenland, do you have a message for European leaders? Many in Europe reject the idea that the island could be for sale.
Well, first of all, Secretary Rubio, I believe, is meeting with the leaders of Denmark and Greenland next week. I want to say it is, but maybe it's the week after that. We'll continue to deliver some of these messages in private, some of them in public. But I guess my advice to European leaders and anybody else would be to take the president of the United States seriously. What has he said about Greenland? Set to the side the crazy overreactions that I've seen from the press and from certain people in Europe. What has the president said? Number one, Greenland is really important, not just to America's missile defense, but to the world's missile defense. Number two, we know that there are hostile adversaries that have shown a lot of interest in that particular territory, that particular slice of the world. So what we're asking our European friends to do is to take the security of that landmass more seriously, because if they're not, the United States is going to have to do something about it. What that is, I'll leave that to the president as we continue to engage in diplomacy with our European friends and everybody on this particular topic. And again, thank you all for listening. Thanks for taking questions. And I just ask you, look, this is politics, and often Republicans and get in arguments with the press about things. I understand that. I think it's really irresponsible for you guys to go out there and imply or tell the American people that a guy who defended himself from being rammed by an automobile is guilty of murder. Be a little bit more careful. We're going to talk about toning down the temperature, which I know the president wants to do, and I certainly want to do. One of the ways we tone down the temperature is to have a media that tells the truth. I encourage you all to do that. God bless you. Happy New Year, guys.
Wow, my friends, that was absolute fire by J.D. Vance. And I think you can understand the importance of me showing you that. For those who haven't seen it today, what a day. I want to jump right to a few things here that I've set aside for you this evening. Welcome, one and all. This is very big. So this just happened in let me share this with you. Tren de Aragua, illegal, just tried to kill border agents by running them over.
For some of the streamer situation that you have seen maybe at ICE, where one streamer is kind of yelling at another live streamer and not wanting to be on camera. We're starting to see some of that. We're also starting to see a lot more masked individuals arriving. So the situation here does appear to be escalating a little bit, although everything so far has remained peaceful. I haven't seen anyone raising hands or anything like that, but we'll be monitoring that situation, especially as back and forth some of the streamer situation.
So that just happened. When the agents identified themselves to the vehicle occupants, the driver weaponized his vehicle and attempted to run over the law enforcement agents, Border Patrol told Bill Malugan. Fearing for his life and safety, an agent fired a defensive shot. The driver drove off with the passenger, fleeing the scene. 2 people shot. Democrats need to call off the rhetoric now. Pray for all federal agents. That's from Eric Doherty. And by the way, there was another incident in Washington, D.C. This just happened December 23rd, but the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department has announced that Officer Terry Bennett has passed away from his injuries after being struck by a vehicle in the line of duty on December 23rd, 2025. He was an 8-year veteran of the department. So tragic. and God bless he and his family, and again being struck by a vehicle. This is no joke. This is what these people that are completely like JD Vance talked about, completely brainwashed. And this is from a muse here. This is about the woman who was killed. She was an organized anti-ICE activist trained to obstruct federal operations. Good participated in an ICE watch group she encountered through her son's woke charter school, according to fellow activists. At a vigil, a parent identified as Lisa described Good as trained on how to disrupt ICE, whistle alerts, and resist agents. And this is literally Twin Cities ICE Watch training. Register now, where you can sign up for this. Okay. And so the New York Post covered this as well. How to submit reports to Minnesota ICE Watch. So this wasn't just, happenstance. This wasn't, a woman just, happening to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Nobody needs to, die, but, and we don't celebrate this death. This is tragic. And JD Vance spoke to that. I don't celebrate this woman's death. I will not get on this mainstream Mockingbird, CIA narrative that he should not have shot her. This is a man that was dragged 30 feet. I'm sorry, I think it was 300 feet just a few months ago. So let me, and this is who this woman is right here. Renee Good was a member of ICE Watch. Their goal is to disrupt ICE operations. Okay. Now, what's going to be interesting is when they trace the funding. Like, how much money did she make and where did that money come from? Okay. I also want to take you to, I went over today's drops yesterday. I didn't go over yesterday's drops, but one of the drops, and one of you posted it in the chat and also said the Hawk covered this today, was, no, that's not the one I want. This is the one. This is January 7th, yesterday. Good win 15. Now, what are the odds? Good win 15. So is that 15 days? Is this, part of the show? Not necessarily that they killed her as part of this show, but is the whole narrative a part of this show? Because as we understand, the narrative has to be such that the general population sees this ridiculous rhetoric by the CIA Mockingbird media and finally starts to realize, ICE is just doing its job. They're trying to get out 21 million people that were funneled, fed, clothed, housed, funded into the United States to do exactly what it is they're doing: cause chaos, affect elections, make life very difficult for the average American, with the violence, with the theft of our money, our aid that we have as a civilized society. We have organizations that are meant to support Americans that are having trouble, whether they can't feed their family or they can't feed themselves, or they're out of work or they're trying to start a small business and get a small business loan, et cetera. And we have these programs in place for Americans. We cannot feed and house and clothe the world. And that is exactly what we're finding out. And now what's been announced is that we are going to have a new, AG that will be focused on this fraudulent activity. And what's happening in Minnesota between Frey, whatever you call that jackass, and Walz, and their rhetoric around this death is completely irresponsible. And I want to take you to this story. This Andy just shared this story today. And this young man, a Wisconsin man, has admitted to killing his parents to steal the money to fund a plot to assassinate President Trump. Nikita Casal pleaded guilty to intentional homicide in Waukesha County on January 8th, charges of 2 counts of hiding a corpse, 2 for the theft of movable property, 2 for identity theft, 1 for taking a vehicle without consent, and 1 for intimidating a witness with threat of force were dismissed as part of the plea deal. For years, leftists and some Democrats have been encouraging people to kill Trump to protect democracy and stop hate. It has led to deadly shootings of his supporters. I mean, it is, JD went there, didn't he? He went there to the brainwashing and to the role that we have been wanting to have a more dialogue about, and certainly more awareness about, the role that the mainstream Mockingbird media is playing in all these tragedies that are unfolding, and how they're stoking the fires of this resentment against this, certainly this administration, but in particular against the ICE agents, which are out there trying to get these people out of our country. Okay. So, excuse me. This is part of it. Let me take you to Jimmy Kimmel. This is part of, this is ABC Disney that runs.
You know what? Maybe they're trying. I know what they're doing. They're trying out a new slogan. Donald J. Trump is going to kill you. It's pretty good, right? This maniac, he isn't just killing people overseas. An ICE agent today shot and killed an unarmed 37-year-old woman during an ICE operation in Minneapolis. They're there under the guise of protecting us. And of course, our president weighed in with compassion. He wrote, "I've just viewed the clip of the event which took place in Minneapolis. It is a horrible thing to watch. The woman screaming was obviously a professional agitator. And the woman driving the car, this is the woman who was killed, was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer who seems to have shot her in self-defense." Now, I saw this video. It didn't look like anybody got run over to me. It looked to me like a woman got scared and tried to drive away, and they shot her. That'll be for the court to decide. Well, the mayor of Minneapolis, though, had this to say.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bull. This was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying, getting killed. And I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis.
That is the shirt I want to see. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis.
Yes. So, wow. I mean, folks, this is just, I mean, this is a level of persuasion and the indoctrination, right? That is just, we wonder why some of these things are happening as they are. Let me take you to what happened in New York City. Listen to this. Christy Nome will hang. I mean, this is crazy, and people are singing in unison. Save a life, kill an ICE.
Necessary. By any means necessary, bitch. I dedicate that one. I dedicate that one. I dedicate that one. Listen, you don't gotta change it if you ain't ready. But some of us are pissed off, aren't we? Tell a murderer. We got someone from the hands off side over here. I dedicate that one to Renee Good. When I say Renee Nicole Good, you say presente. Renee Nicole Good. Presente. Renee Nicole Good. Presente. We are going to.
So what's going on here is obviously a combination of what Vance was talking about the brainwashed masses, but there's no question that these people are being paid, and we are going to get to the bottom of this. That is what we are, that's why they brought the DOJ out. I want to take you to Byron Donaldson, who was in the House. What happened to that? Here it is right here. And by the way, this was reposted by, Elon Musk. So fortunately, 2.6 million people are seeing this.
Going out back in Washington. Just left the oversight hearing on Minnesota. I mean, this thing is crazy. You have the governor and his team going after whistleblowers, state employees, trying to do the right thing in Minnesota to explain the fraud that was happening, to get it under control. And it looks like Governor Walz, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, Keith Ellison, not only did they know about it, they were trying to protect the fraud to continue. These fraudsters were donating campaign cash to the governor and the attorney general. The whistleblowers who were coming forward were threatened. Their jobs were threatened. Their careers were threatened. And then we find out that the fraudsters were buying property in Kenya and Turkey, sending money back to Somalia. The money going back to Somalia could potentially have fallen into the hands of Al-Shabaab, the Al-Qaeda affiliates in Somalia. Absolute crazy stuff. And the funny thing is, I don't even think it's just Minnesota. I think we just found out about it in Minnesota. I think it's happening in other states too. And it may not just be the Somalian community, but other parts of the country where these programs, American people are just being defrauded. I think the bigger thing is we gotta up here, we gotta put real teeth into these spending items. If we're gonna put money into a lot of these programs, There need to be hard audit requirements, eligibility requirements. Obviously, there's criminal charges if there's wire fraud, but I think if you have elected officials who know about this stuff and we find out they know, they need to be brought up on conspiracy charges because they're defrauding the American taxpayer too. One thing I know about this town, there's always a new day and a new crazy here in Washington. I think that's why people are more frustrated than anything else, because there's no common sense here. And when you try to bring it and put into these bills, the Democrats don't want to hear it. The only time they ever want to talk about accountability is when it favors them politically, and that's really upsetting. Anyway, till next time.
And by the way, President Trump's first post of the day, which was, let me see what time this was, 7:42 a.m. He said, "Arrest them all. They are criminals. Foreign ATM, Somali cash exodus from Minneapolis exponentially larger than other major U.S. airports." So this is a story by Just the News. And of course, this is where John Solomon does a lot of his stuff. And the cash moved overseas in luggage by Somali couriers from the Minneapolis airport was 10 to 100 times larger than the total foreign exodus of money at other larger American airports the last 2 years. Homeland Security Department officials said the statistics they have gathered in recent weeks show the movement of cash out of Minnesota was substantially abnormal and should have raised red flags during the Biden administration, long before the Trump administration began investigating as part of a major fraud scheme that stole billions from taxpayers in the state. So very, very interesting. So President Trump is obviously on this. And this is more of the rhetoric, by the way, of the left. Of course, Hakeem Low IQ Jeffries. Let's just hear a few seconds of him.
The situation that took place.
He sounds like a dumb Mike Tyson.
In Minnesota is a complete and total disgrace. That masked ICE agent showed.
So the masked ICE agent, they're masked because they're being doxxed, but masked shows that it was like criminal.
Reckless disregard for human life. And unnecessary.
Wait a minute. Who's reckless disregard for human life? Who was wrecking with her car a human life?
Necessarily killed an American citizen, leaving children without their mother.
The mother who joined the anti-ICE events and tried to run one over. I'm sorry, but it's like, yeah.
The extremism that we've seen unleashed on the American people by the administration has been out of control. The situation.
So what I also wanted to say was, I think it was CBS today tonight that I watched, and they had the, what do you call it? No, I think it was Tapper, had on the Maryland governor, who is spewing similar rhetoric as well, which is, again, literally, I mean, throwing gasoline on this fire that needs to be tamped out. Like, it needs to be taken care of, right? So I want to take you to one story that came out of the White House yesterday that is now law, or will be happening, and that is the withdrawal of the United States from international organizations, conventions, and treaties that are contrary to the interests of the United States. My friends, this is America first. Okay. And on February 4th, 2025, I issued an executive order 14199 withdrawing the United States from and ending funding to certain United Nations organizations and reviewing the United States support to all international organizations. That executive order directed the Secretary of State, in consultation with the U.S. representative to the United Nations, to conduct a review of all international intergovernmental organizations of which the United States is a member and provides any type of funding or other support. So the Secretary of State has reported his findings as required by Executive Order 14199. And I've considered Rubio's report, and after deliberating with my cabinet, have determined that it is contrary to the interests of the United States to remain a member of, participate in, or otherwise provide support to the organizations listed in Section 2 of this memorandum. Now, what's very interesting about that as well is, which is fantastic, by the way, and it's another chink in the armor of the United Nations, right? Where they're going to eventually be shit out of luck. And I want to take you to something else here that I am seeing is eluding me right now. In response to President Trump's post that he made about the Somalians in Minnesota, Scott Bessent just today said, starting tomorrow, if you're on public assistance, you cannot wire money out of the country. The Treasury is derailing the gravy train to Somalia. So, folks, they're on it. I mean, this is amazing, the kind of activity that we are seeing that is absolutely going to be dismantling all these things that have been just rampant theft from our coffers, and also released by the DHS today was this video of agents, law enforcement, removing what they call mountains of evidence retrieved during the investigation into the alleged taxpayer fraud in Minnesota. So again, this is the DHS, okay, posted this, right? So they're definitely, getting on this in a huge way, and it's just fantastic to see. Meanwhile, the Department of Labor is also dropping QCOMs. This is from IndoctriNATION. And this is the U.S. Department of Labor. Trust the plan, trust Trump. Trust the plan. Okay. Now, let me see. It was last edited at 5:27 p.m. Let me see if I can pull that up and see what happens there and see if it's anything worth seeing. Monday, next week, bigger, public. We listened, 2080, 40 goes to 4060. Now, Q has told us that what we are seeing take place is 20% of the operation. So all the craziness that we've been seeing is 20% of the operation. This Department of Labor post just took us to the fact that we're now going to see 40%. Now, we've been to this one before and thought that we were seeing more and more, but I think this is a confirmation that is why we are seeing what we're seeing. I also want to take us to 15, which takes us there with the zeros there, and 15 is the there are more good people than bad. The wizards and warlocks inside term will not allow another satanic evil piece of shit to control our country. Realize Soros. We know that this funding is going to go back to Soros. It's going to trace right back to Soros. Okay. Clinton Foundation, Obama, a lot's been coming out about that. The DNI has the proof that Obama interfered with a presidential election and a presidential candidate and a president while he was in office, and violated the Logan Act by going around the world and meeting with world leaders before or after Trump, trying to get them to not listen and not capitulate to Trump. That's treason right there. Renegade. Okay. Putin, etc., are all controlled by three families. The fourth was removed post-Trump's victory. Now, we believe that Putin has capitulated as well and is part of the White Hats shifting all this, but not the old Putin who was the KGB agent, having people murdered, etc., but the new Putin who is now working with Trump. 11.3, Podesta indicted. Again, 11.3 is a friend shared with me yesterday that I think yesterday was 11.3 the 3rd of January. January is actually the 11th month in the original calendar. That's why November 9, December Deca 10, January 11, 11.3. And so some major stuff going down. And also 11.6, whom indicted. Those days have passed. Manafort was placed into Trump's camp as well as others. The corruption that will come out is so serious that deals must be cut for people to walk away. Otherwise, 70% of elected politicians would be in jail. You are seeing it already begin. And we were taking to 70% 2 days ago as well. A deep cleaning is occurring, and the prevention and defense of pure evil is occurring on a daily basis. They never thought they were going to lose control of the presidency, not just Dems, and they thought they had control since making past mistakes. JFK, Reagan, Goodspeed, Patriots, P.S. Soros is targeted. And what is happening right now? One of the CIA Mockingbird media tools asked J.D. Vance, what is going on with, who is funding, who is supporting these people? And he said, listen, if somebody throws a brick at ICE, we've got to ask ourselves, who bought the brick, right? And so that's what they're getting to the bottom of, and also certainly with this new AG that is going to hit the scene very soon. This is going to be discovered, and these people are going to go down. Folks, if you would like to support my work here, I certainly appreciate it, and appreciate the keeping the lights on, keeping the roof overhead. I've got some stuff coming up here in the next 2 days that I could use a little help on, so I ask you for that. And again, folks, if there was, and I thank you and bless you for the blessing of the support on this program. And I just, I feel the love, I feel the support. And I ask you to continue and to elevate this show to the level that I believe it deserves to be. And I think you do as well, because of the way that I handle myself with this information, with this news. I've been unwavering of Trump. I've been unwavering of Q. Speaking of being unwavering of Trump, the House, the Senate voted today 52-47 that President Trump cannot take additional action in Venezuela without congressional approval. Now, President Trump has called out Susan Collins, Josh Hawley, Lisa Murkowski, Rand Paul, and Todd Young, the Republicans that voted with the Democrats to take away his War Powers Act and the War Powers Resolution. And this is to expose these people, because what we're seeing happen in Venezuela is absolutely fantastic. And this is the latest, which was Trump demanded more than 800 political prisoners be freed. Wow, my friends. And I also, President Trump was talking about Cuba and about the Cubans who have, came to America on life rafts, on rickety boats, on rowboats, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and how many didn't make it. I've shared this story before, but I met this Cuban man, a father of a beautiful daughter, and his wife, and I dined with them in Florida, and he told me the story. He was very pro-Trump, and he told me the story when he was 4 years old. He was on one of those boats. They put all the children on the inside of the boat, and all the adults were outside. Now, all these boats were in the harbor in Cuba, and I forget the name of the harbor. They held them in this harbor. They wouldn't let them leave until a storm was arriving. Then they let them leave because they wanted to get out of Cuba. And so basically, Castro had them released into the ocean as this storm was approaching. So their trip to the United States was timed at a time of a storm that just, he said most of the adults on the outside of that boat did not make it. Think about that. This is what happened with Castro. This is what happened with Cuba. These are the level of absolute, just despicable human beings that are in control of some of these countries that we have to put a stop to. And, speaking of these countries that putting a stop to, Mario Nafal says that, who has, some really great content, by the way. If you're not following Mario Nafal, I don't agree with him on everything, but he does have some great content. But he reported that Iran is on the brink, protests nationwide, economy collapsing. Ayatollah reportedly planning escape to Russia. Now, it is not verified, but supposedly the Ayatollah has already been taken out of Iran to Russia, and because they're calling for the death of the Ayatollah. Now, over 350 protests have erupted across 28 of Iran's 31 provinces since December 28th, with at least 35 people dead and over 1,200 detained. Also, they had an internet blackout so that they could not communicate with one another. And supposedly Elon Musk made Starlink free to everybody so that they could have internet. So there was a coordinated blackout of Iran internet. So the Delta Force that captured Maduro is now repositioning to the Middle East as Iran crisis escalates. The same elite special operations units that captured Nicolas Maduro days ago are now allegedly moving to the Middle East. Over a dozen U.S. strategic airlifters have crossed the Atlantic to Britain and then eastward, many carrying helicopters operated by the Night Stalkers, the elite unit that flew Delta Force commandos into Caracas. Delta Force has reportedly pivoted to the Middle East, with Army Rangers and air assault forces from Europe being repositioned rapidly. Delta Force operators are reportedly taking position along Iraq's borders with Syria and Jordan, possibly targeting Iran-backed militias refusing to disarm. Flight tracking shows U.S. and British refueling tankers headed into the region. An unexplained blackout across Greek and Cypriot airspace Monday may have masked U.S. asset movements. Remember when that happened? American intelligence aircraft are operating continuously off Iran's coast. The CENTCOM commander just made the long journey to Bahrain. Trump warned last week that if Iran killed peaceful protesters, which I just told you they did, the U.S. was locked and loaded and ready to go. That was when the death toll was single digits. It now stands at 35. Source is Warfronts. Okay. Very interesting. Things are heating up, my friends, very much so. Now, I did want to say about that Senate vote to rescind Trump's, powers to go into to do any more activity in Venezuela. Trump has already called that out, and he will veto it, I'm sure. And so, and if he vetoes it, then it's going to take 2/3 of the Senate and for that vote, and they're not going to get 2/3. But what we are seeing are the traitors, the Republican traitors that are taking these powers away from President Trump. Okay, let me take you to the story. I meant to take you to this just a minute ago. And this has to do with the ICE agent that shot this woman in self-defense. And this was the story from, let me see. Well, here's the story.
Executing a warrant for 39-year-old Roberto Carlos Munoz. They say Munoz entered the country unlawfully, and he also pled guilty to fourth-degree criminal sexual conduct back in 2023 for abusing a minor. So this guy that ICE tried to pick up was a pedophile, is a pedophile. Tuesday morning, agents pulled him over. Court documents say he repeatedly refused to comply before a federal agent took out his spring-loaded window punch with his right hand and broke the driver's side rear window. These images show the officer's hand in the vehicle. In this video, you can see the driver take off with the agent hanging from the car, dragging him 300 feet through front yards. These graphic images show the aftermath. A bloody agent who needed 33 stitches for his significant cuts. And now a political battle with a top Homeland Security official criticizing Governor Tim Walz, posting on X, instead of comparing ICE law enforcement to the Gestapo, Walz should be thanking our brave law enforcement. The Department of Justice says a request for Munoz to be held after that 2022 arrest was, quote, not honored by local authorities, and Munoz was released.
Thank you guys for all your great comments about Cuba. And yeah, this is really, really something. Yeah, by the way, Anad Danin, 11.3 Law of War Manual covers belligerent occupation. 11.4 cover military commissioning. Mr. Podesta is Maduro. Just Google what is a Podesta. We may have been, certainly we were one of the first shows to go from 11.3 and 11.4 and 11.6, thinking they were dates, into the Law of War Manual. And so thank you for that and for reminding us about that. So let's look this up. What is a Podesta? Let me take you to, let me go to Google first. I have to go to Google if I'm going to search. What is a Podesta? I don't think I've ever done this. What is a Podesta? What is the meaning of the word Podesta? In medieval Latin communes, the highest judicial and military magistrate. Very interesting. The highest judicial and military magistrate. Okay, very, very interesting. Which also brings me to Senator Lindsey Graham. Now, let me see. Here we go. Now, Lindsey Graham, now we don't like him, right? I mean, he's definitely, in a deep state operative. And by the way, thank you for Anandanin. We've seen him do some very bad things against Trump, but we've also seen Trump embrace him recently. And let me see if I can get to this post of his. Here we go. So remember that dialogue, his questioning of Kavanaugh in the Kavanaugh hearings, and they spoke about treason and the death penalty, right? That was a very, very telling and important conversation between Lindsey Graham and, of course, Kavanaugh. By the way, I want to get back to the Supreme Court, because tomorrow morning, I believe the Supreme Court is going to hold a vote on whether or not President Trump has to pay back $600 billion in tariffs. Okay. Now, when that all was going down, I told you and I showed you all the posts by President Trump that this was a national security issue. So I believe that if the Supreme Court, okay, overturns the tariff ability of President Trump, which has been used to stop many wars, 8 to this point, he used the tariffs to stop several of them, that he is going to override the Supreme Court with the military, okay, because there are 3 branches of the government, as we know. There's the legislative, right? That's Congress, and we're seeing all the corruption there. The judiciary, which is the Supreme Court, and all these judges that have been taking action against the Trump presidency, okay? And of course, the executive branch. The only one that is not beholden to foreign money, foreign leaders, foreign countries that I can see is the executive, and that's President Trump. And that's why the military is going to be necessary to come in. So Lindsey Graham says, I served for 33 years as a military lawyer, judge, advocate for the U.S. Air Force. I was a prosecutor, defense attorney, and for a brief period, a military judge. The authority of the commander-in-chief, and this is in response, by the way, to the Senate vote. The authority of the commander-in-chief under Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution in matters of conflict and the president's ability to use military force to protect our nation is a subject matter area I feel comfortable with. Today's vote in the U.S. Senate on the Venezuela War Powers Resolution was a gift to our enemies, will encourage more bad behavior in Venezuela, and is an unconstitutional attempt to restrict the power of the commander-in-chief. Throughout my political career, I've been consistent on the idea that under the U.S. Constitution, there is only one commander-in-chief, and that is the president. I've always rejected the idea that the U.S. Constitution allows Congress to replace the president's judgment as commander-in-chief in matters of military force. Also, the Supreme Court, because of the national security issue that is being raised tomorrow, okay? Now, let me see. Hold on one sec. I want to get to, okay. I told then President Obama his actions in Syria fell within his authority as commander-in-chief and that he did not need congressional authorization. And of course, Lindsey Graham was not a fan of President Obama, but legally, President Obama had the right to do that. But Congress wasn't challenging President Obama at all in all those actions. Declaring war is exclusive to Congress and has only been done 5 times in our history. That does not mean a president can only use military force with congressional approval. There have been over 130 military actions taken by a president without congressional authorization. None have been stopped by the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, he doesn't mention Congress here. He mentions the U.S. Supreme Court. If President Trump says that the tariffs are national security, that can be deemed a military authorization or a military move taken by a president. So Lindsey Graham gets ahead of tomorrow's vote of the U.S. Supreme Court with this. The War Powers Act of 1973 is patently unconstitutional and must give way to delegated powers of the Constitution itself, designating the president as the sole commander-in-chief of our armed forces under Article 2. One of the bedrock principles of American jurisprudence is that the U.S. Constitution reigns supreme in matters of law. So the Constitution overrides the Supreme Court. President Trump is right to be upset with Republicans that voted with Democrats to limit his ability to change Venezuela for the better and make the world safer. And again, the Monroe Doctrine makes our hemisphere, the Western Hemisphere, safe from, back when it was written, it was to make the Western Hemisphere safe from European involvement, which is now obviously expanded to Asia, with Russia, with China, and their activities in the Western Hemisphere, for example, in Cuba, in Venezuela. If a member of Congress disagrees with the commander-in-chief's decision to use the military force, then they have the right to stop funding for those operations because Congress has the power of the purse under the U.S. Constitution. Or they can bring impeachment actions against the president if they think it is unlawful. You know, how many times have they brought impeachment against President Trump? I lost count. A member of Congress does not have the right to replace their judgment for that of the president, who is the commander-in-chief. The nation cannot function with 535 commanders-in-chief. Now, especially when it's being revealed that they are compromised. To my Republican colleagues, you are buying into unconstitutional garbage. If you continue down this road, you are going to lessen the chances of success in Venezuela and other theaters where President Trump, through his strength and resolve, is bringing about positive change. Again, our enemies will be encouraged by this vote in U.S. Senate. Not only are the enemies encouraged that are foreign enemies, but our enemies that are foreign influenced. President Trump had posted, Republicans should be ashamed of the senators that just voted with Democrats in attempting to take away our powers to fight and defend the United States of America. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Rand Paul, Josh Hawley, and Todd Young should never be elected to office again. This vote greatly hampers American self-defense and national security, impeding the president's authority as commander-in-chief. In any event, and despite their stupidity, the War Powers Act is unconstitutional, totally violating Article 2 of the Constitution, as all presidents and their departments of justice have determined before me. In other words, under other presidents, right? Nevertheless, a more important Senate vote will be taking place next week on this very subject. Okay. Whew, folks, it is getting good. It is getting good, so good. All about exposure. Bring those hiding in the shadows into the light. Let the world see who's in the deep state system. Alonso, absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. This is about, not just showing the unconstitutionality of these judges, but also the unconstitutionality of these congressional leaders, right, that are completely compromised, right? So, man, we've all known that Trump was to be the last president, but nobody was asking what comes next. Exactly. Sleeping giant. That's going to be very interesting. Who is a snake? Yes, Sergeant Petrie. This is about, Obama and the Muslim Brotherhood, which, by the way, is in control, and all this Somali money will be traced back to the Muslim Brotherhood. The snake, of course, referring to Obama through Valerie Jarrett, whose father-in-law was partners with the writer of The Snake, Oscar Brown Jr. Vernon Jarrett and Oscar Brown Jr. were the first nationally syndicated black talk show, radio talk show out of Chicago. And Oscar Brown Jr., they were both communists as well. Oscar Brown Jr. would later leave the Communist Party, saying that he is too black to be read. Sergeant Petrie, look at drop 1236. Happy to do so. Let's go to drop 1236. This better be good, Sarge. This better be good. I'm sure it will be. Here we go. This is the drop here. Let's go to it. Oh, yes. Okay. So this is when Michelle Bachmann was coming out and describing the Muslim Brotherhood and their involvement in the United States. And she was, completely discredited. But it came in response to a letter from Minnesota lawmaker Representative Keith Ellison, a Democrat who was the first Muslim elected to Congress. Ellison last week asked Bachmann for evidence to support a series of letters the Republicans sent to 5 national security agencies demanding investigations into alleged Muslim Brotherhood infiltration in their ranks. Who is the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, who is absolutely involved with this Somalian fraud? His name, my friends, is Keith Ellison. I'm sorry, I cut that. That was cut off from you, I think. Here we go. There we go. Keith Ellison. Okay, great call, Sarge. Very good. And yeah, and he's in the spotlight now because of this fraud in Minnesota, without question, without question. So, so great drop. Thank you for that. So this is, my friends, this is getting really interesting. CNBC, my friends. Okay, when the mainstream Mockingbird media is starting to praise Donald Trump, that things have gotten crazy. Check this out.
Buckle up. This is unreal. The movement in this number, minus 29.4 billion. We cut it basically in half. We cut it in half. Just consider this. In March, it was 136 billion. Right now, it's a whisker under 30 billion. We haven't been that small in a long time. I don't have enough records here to go back that far, but you're going back a ways. And here's the news on why it moved lower. Buckle up. This is unreal. The movement in.
So the initial jobless claims and is dropping, and also that report, the unemployment report, is going to come out tomorrow as well. And but things are moving in the right direction. I want to remind you of the letter that I shared from the Dallas Express from Hugo El Pollo Carvajal on December 2nd. And it was a letter to President Trump. My name is Hugo Carvajal Barrios. For many years, I was a high-ranking member of the Venezuelan regime. I was a 3-star general trusted by both Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro, and served as director of military intelligence and a deputy in the National Assembly. Today, I sit in an American prison because I voluntarily pled guilty to the crimes charged against me, a narco-terrorism conspiracy. I write to atone by telling the full truth so that the United States can protect itself from the dangers I witnessed for so many years. I publicly broke with the Maduro regime in 2017 and fled my country knowing that I faced criminal charges in the United States. In doing so, I became their enemy. Knowing the risks, I acted with the strongest conviction to dismantle Maduro's criminal regime and bring freedom to my country. Today, I see the need to address the American people about the reality of what the Venezuelan regime truly is and why President Trump's policies are not only correct, but absolutely necessary to the United States national security. He covers narco-terrorism, how he witnessed Chavez government becoming a criminal organization now run by Maduro, and the purpose of this organization, now known as the Cartel of the Suns, is to weaponize drugs against the United States. This is why President Trump has declared them terrorist organizations. The drugs that reached your cities through new routes were not accidents of corruption, nor just the work of independent traffickers. They were deliberate policies coordinated by the Venezuelan regime against the United States. This plan was suggested by the Cuban regime to Chavez in the mid-2000s and has been successfully executed with help from FARC, ELN, Cuban operatives, and Hezbollah. The regime has provided weapons, passports, and impunity for these terrorist organizations to operate freely from Venezuela against the U.S. Then he goes on to Tren de Aragua. I was present when decisions were made to organize and weaponize criminal gangs across Venezuela to protect the regime, and Chavez ordered the recruitment of criminal leaders inside and outside prisons to defend the revolution in exchange for impunity. After Chavez died, Maduro expanded the strategy by exporting criminality and chaos abroad to target Venezuelan political exiles and artificially reduce crime statistics within Venezuela. Gang leaders were instructed to send thousands of members out of the country into our country. This was coordinated through the Ministry of Interior, prisons, and the National Guard and National Police forces. Tren de Aragua became the most effective and fastest growing. When the Biden-Harris open border policy became widely known, they seized the opportunity to send these operatives into the United States. They now have obedient, armed personnel on American soil. To finance their operations, they were explicitly instructed to continue kidnapping, extorting, and killing. Every crime they commit on your soil is an act ordered by the regime. Okay? Counterintelligence and espionage against the United States. They tapped submarine internet cables that connect most of South America and the Caribbean islands with the United States for the purpose of penetrating U.S. government communications. In 2015, I warned Maduro that allowing Russian intelligence to build and run a secret listening post on La Orquilla Island would one day invite American bombs. He ignored me. Okay. For 20 years, the Venezuelan regime sent spies into your country. Many are still there, some disguised as members of the Venezuelan opposition. Cuban intelligence showed me their networks inside your naval bases on the East Coast. They bragged about having sent thousands of spies over decades, some now career politicians. U.S. diplomats and CIA officers were paid to assist Chavez and Maduro in remaining in power. These Americans acted as spies for Cuba and Venezuela, and some remain active to this day. Then he goes into Smartmatic and your elections. Smartmatic was born as an electoral tool of the Venezuelan regime, but soon derived into a tool to help keep the regime stay in power forever. I know this because I placed the head of IT of the National Electoral Council in this position, and he reported directly to me. The Smartmatic system can be altered. This is a fact. We've seen this, by the way. This technology was later exported abroad, including to the United States. Regime operatives maintain relationships with election officials and voting machine companies inside your country. I do not claim that every election is stolen, but I state with certainty that elections can be rigged with the software, and it has been used to do so. People of the United States, make no mistake about the threat posed by allowing a narco-terrorist organization to roam freely in the Caribbean and throughout Latin America, doing everything possible to harm the American people, to finance anti-Americanism across the continent, and to facilitate the operations of other terrorist organizations and enemies of the U.S. within Venezuela and now within your borders. Whew. President Trump's policies against the Maduro criminal regime are not just justified, but necessary and proportionate to the threat. He may even be underestimating what the regime is prepared to do to hold on to power. They have contingency plans for every extreme scenario to ensure they never relinquish control. I absolutely support President Trump's policy towards Venezuela because it is in self-defense and he is acting based on the truth. I remain ready to provide additional details about these matters to the U.S. government. Hugo Carvajal Barrios, United States of America, December 2nd, 2025. Okay. And this was reported in the Dallas Express site. So if you want this article, you can look up the Dallas Express site and you can share that out. The article and, of course, the actual letter. Okay. So, yeah, this is all going down, my friends. This is really huge. Very, very important things that are unfolding on the world stage, and you know what's happening in Iran. This is this is very very tragic, and of course, this shooting of this woman who was an operative being paid to get in the way of ICE is now dead. And the man who shot her was dragged 300 feet, many stitches, as a result of, trying to apprehend a pedophile that in 2023, the politicians and the judges of Minnesota let back out onto the street. Okay. So very, very big things happening. Also, I heard that from a friend, and also from the reports of the on the silver market and what's happening with silver right now. And by the way, if you have an interest in silver, I talked with one of the executives at 7K today. Really incredible people at this company, by the way. I actually went down the Salmon River in Idaho with this man. He's got 7 children. Awesome guy. And I asked him flat out, because people are having trouble buying silver. There are weeks wait. And one of the benefits to getting silver from this company is that they have access to it and you don't have to wait for it. Okay. And you can buy it fractionally, meaning that if you want to buy gold and you only have $100, you're still going to get the gold price of if you bought a whole ounce of gold. Whereas if you buy it anywhere else, they mark it up if you buy less than an ounce of gold. So you can buy $200, $300, $400 worth of gold. So if you want to buy gold and silver, you can join this fractionalgold.com/Patriot Silver. I think if for every there's a membership. I think it's $200 to join this buying club, which allows you to get silver and gold at fractional prices. But I also wanted to say that, hold on one second. Let me take the timer off of that. That you can do this, and you can buy this. You can have it stored in their vault until you have an ounce of gold that they can ship to you, or you can have a silver bar that they can ship to you. They store it in their vault, and then you can have it shipped. They ship FedEx. I've gotten silver coins from them for years through FedEx. Never had a problem getting silver. I've never bought any gold from them because I just have focused on silver, because I think the silver is the higher, the ratio between gold and silver has been very out of balance. And so I feel that silver is going to catch up to that balance, and that you're going to see even greater raises in silver proportionately and percentage wise than you would see with gold. But that's just my take on it. I'm not suggesting investment advice. I just believe in it myself. And so I mentioned that. A lot of amazing things happening right now, my friends. Stay close. I'm going to be, let me see. I think I'm going to come on Saturday night. I'll let you know more about that. I'm off tomorrow night because my daughter has a basketball game, so I want to go to that. But I'm gonna end with this last story about California and Spencer Pratt, who is now running for the mayor of Los Angeles. An actor who has been exposing the Palisades fire corruption, which, by the way, President Trump posted on today. Let me see. Let me show you that first, actually. President Trump posted this today. Incompetent California leaders headed by Governor Gavin Newsom and a traveling mayor who likes Africa better than the USA. She chose to go there rather than stay home and fight the worst fire in California history, are absolutely unable to get people permits to rebuild their homes. Their homes versus THEIR. So I haven't checked into that misspelling. All federal permits have been issued and received long ago, President DJT. Okay. Now, let me take you to Spencer Pratt.
We got some breaking news. Look what's dropping today. I have the advanced copy of the House Judiciary Committee's report on FireAid. And the report proves what we've known all along. FireAid raised $100 million under false pretense that it was directly helping fire victims, and then misused those charitable donations to fund political activists, podcasters, and bloated nonprofit salaries and bonuses. People across the country gave their hard-earned dollars to help fire victims, and FireAid used that money to fund causes and projects completely unrelated to fire recovery, including insane stuff like fungus planting. 100,000 went to voter participation. $500,000 went to political advocacy groups. 100,000 went to a podcaster that's not even a fire victim because she talked about the fire. And over $500,000 went to bonuses, salaries, and money for consultants for nonprofit organizations. And listen, Jim Jordan's not done. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And more letters went out today demanding that the recipients of FireAid money prove how they spent their funds. $75 million has been lost, but the scam is over. So FireAid, what are you going to do with the $25 million that's still left? You better start helping actual fire victims instead of lining the pockets of these
There you go, my friends. Very important revelations that are coming out about the fraud. Now, many people started talking about the midterms because that was the narrative pushed out that the Democrats are going to take the midterms because of, the problems that the Trump administration is having and so forth. But here's what I want to say, and I said that right away to you, by the way. Midterms are not going to be a problem. Why? Look what's coming out. It's January, folks. Okay? We have 9 months till midterms. It's 8 months, right? Look what's coming out. It's going to be huge. It's going to be a huge awakening for the masses, and certainly primarily for the Democrats. And I'm very excited about this, folks. I will see you Saturday. Look for a note Saturday dropping on the time and the situation on Saturday night's show. I love you. I thank you for being here. I thank you for your support. We'll try to do the wheel spin on Saturday because we don't have enough tonight, but thank you for those who are stepping up and donating to support this very important show. Thank you all for your incredible contributions in the chat. Thank you for the moderating by Moonbeam and by Quasi Pete. And thank you, Barbara, for the heads up on the audio. And yeah, my friends, much love to you all. This is going to be fantastic. Lisa Lindbergh says Mrs. Good, her GoFundMe is at 1.3 million as of an hour ago. Yeah. This is to tell us exactly how many people are still brainwashed, but also how much of that money was, promised to her. If anything happens, we'll take care of you, just like those protesters in 2020 were promised. If you get arrested, we'll get you out right away. We'll post your bail, and we'll make sure that your arrests don't hold any weight. All right, my friends, much love and God bless. And I thank you for your incredible attention to the things that are so very important in this day and age. And I just got to say that this time in human history is going to be talked about for generations to come. and you and I are a part of it. And I'm glad to be on this journey in this revolution with you. And hats off to you, my friends, for all the good work, all the attention, all the sharing, all the support. Much love. Good night, and see you soon. Bye.